Hi, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for coming on again.
Sure, anytime, anytime.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. I thought you mentioned it before. Might be nice to have a previous guest on again.
Exactly. I think you should every year recycle some guests because you can see growth in your own podcast and with the guest.
Of course, I get what you mean. And is there anything you want to ask me beforehand, or you want to just get right into it?
Well, as long as you're recording, we're all set. Don't forget to record, and we can start this anytime.
Yeah, I'm ready when you are. Well, first thing I want to ask is right now it's January. What has changed since we last spoke? And like, I think it was May. I think it was May last.
Right. So around that time, I was thinking of coming up with a new concept for a podcast, and I threw out a lot of ideas to my friends and in my own head, and I decided to do a sports podcast, and it's a NFL podcast called Tight Spreads NFL. You can go to YouTube and find that, and you can also find it on Instagram. But the concept was just to do spreads on NFL football games. So, for example, Team A versus Team B plus minus three, which way you should bet. Obviously, for entertainment purposes only. I don't condone heavy gambling, but if you want to partake $5 or $10 here, I'm your guy. So I started the podcast obviously first week of September or the first week of NFL. And I did about 16 weeks worth of podcasting. Every week I had a brand new podcast. And towards the end I had to finish up because well, the season is winding down. So I did about 16 episodes.
You said you don't like condone like big gambling. Why not? I got the fantasy football kind of vibe from watching.
Right. So anyone who's familiar with gambling understands how fast you can start losing money and you dig yourself into a hole and you can't dig out obviously. So this was more of for me personally, this podcast was more about proof of concept. If anyone wants to have their own podcast and they don't know where to start, I can always showcase my own and say, "Hey, this is what I did. This is where I succeeded, where I failed, as far as the content, equipment, lighting, post production, everything from start to finish. I was a one man crew, so the graphics you see on my podcast are my own graphics and the lighting and the microphone, which is what I use. By the way, I'm using a Shure SM7B, and the camera is a Panasonic GH5 Lumix.
Gotta say, with the graphics, did a pretty good job. So, good job on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Last time we spoke, you sent me a podcast that you did a few years back. Why not just continue doing that?
Okay, so this question gets asked quite a bit. I started a podcast and I quit, and then you want to know the reason why. Usually, it's because of time. You have a family, or if you have a co-host who decided to change jobs or move to another state, you're always at their mercy. For me, I just wanted to try something brand new, which is one-on-one, me and camera. I have full-blown autonomy and control. So that was my take. I just wanted to start something new.
Do you ever think you'll go back to like interviewing people or somewhat of that kind of style, or do you just gonna stick with something new for now?
Probably not. I enjoy being a guest, and I enjoy being in control of my own podcast. But I love being a guest. You're like the third or fourth person I'm a guest on for a podcast, so I really enjoy doing that.
Besides somewhat gambling, what is the style of your new podcast?
Mine is fast and to the point. I do enjoy long form podcasts where they last 30 minutes to an hour, but I wanted to do something different. Under 4 minutes, under 5 minutes, boom, boom, boom. Something you can listen to while you're driving in the car to work, and then you'll get all your information.
Are there any named podcasts that you're interested in?
Yeah, so a couple like big time podcasters. Um, what's great about social media now is that you can send them a direct message, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, and they can respond. And some of them do. There's a football podcast, and I stay in touch with him. What's interesting with that gentleman, he seems like he's very knowledgeable, and I asked him to come on my own podcast, and he says I will do it, I will do it, and we were so close. And then all of a sudden his podcast blew up, and I mean like really blew up, where it's his main source of income, and that's what he does for a living. And then he just gave me a heads up, like, hey, it's going to be a while before I'm on your podcast because I'm really, really busy right now.
How big is he, if you have an idea?
Millions, millions. He even mentions that it pays for his house in Scottsdale, Arizona.
What's the guy's name? I might check him out.
His name is John Middlecoff, and the pod is Three and Out.
Oh, might check him out in the future. How do you like to prepare for each episode? Like, do you just watch it, or what's your idea of preparing?
Well, usually I have a template of how I want it to look. So about 90% of every episode is identical. And then I kind of tinker around, maybe just a little bit of different lighting, warmer, cooler backdrop. As you could tell, I have a different backdrop now. I manipulate the lighting. The plants, I think, are the same since the last podcast. They're fake. And I threw in like a yellow hue onto the green plants so they kind of stand out. And I kind of wanted to balance the blue and the red. But at the last second, I'm wearing a blue shirt. So, for example, that's going to bother me now because I'm looking at it and I see that blue and blue doesn't go well. But I do have a light on top for anyone who's watching this visually. I do have a light on top. It's supposed to give me
Is
depth.
it like a real police background?
No,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
full blown studio. It's like 20 feet ceiling. So if you hear an echo, that's why I'm also talking really close to this Shure microphone. I'm all about knowledge. I want to tell listeners or viewers what I'm using, and maybe I can teach them something. And at the same time, someone might message me saying, "Hey, I like that, but maybe you should change X, Y, and Z." And it's constantly evolving.
How do you try to build on it? Like, what do you try to improve every time?
Actually, there's two things I usually work on the actual production side and quality, but no way around it. It's also getting the right spreads. So I usually pick 5 games every episode or every week. Hopefully, I end up 3-2, maybe 4-1. I have yet to have a 5-0 week where I won all 5 games. But overall, just going back to the spread, I was 7 games above 500, which is on par of what you expect if you're doing your due diligent with spreads.
Is it possible to talk more on it?
No, I don't want to get into it because the games are over, and it's really difficult to dissect
Okay.
games that happened like weeks ago. And it's just as soon as I'm done with one episode, I watch the game. So just to give you a timeline, usually I do my research on Tuesday after the Monday night football game, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I shoot on Thursday night or Friday morning for the upcoming weekend for the games on Sunday and Monday. And then
Okay.
um and then by Tuesday I forget. It's like next week.
Well, I gotcha. I completely get you. When I meant, like, how do you build on your episodes? Like, when you're trying to prepare for a recording, like, what's your routine for, like, recording and all that?
A lot of script writing. So every game has a paragraph, and I want to dissect that and keep it concise. So I don't want to have, I really don't want to have like 5 paragraphs about one game. It's shoot and to the point. One paragraph per one game. Also, I like to throw in some humor into it. And one of my friends every week joined me for the podcast. His pick was the NSFW, not safe for work pick of the week. And those are always funny. Full shout out to my boy Aaron. He was, I think, 3-13, which is not good. He kind of screwed up my my ranking, but that's okay. I
Yeah.
love him, and he's going to be back next year, next season as well.
Yeah. Hope he does. By the way, want to say, hope your daughter got those presents under the tree that you mentioned in the eighth episode.
Oh, you remember that episode? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a tough one. That was a tough one.
But you try to make them quick. You try to make it like maybe a minute at the most.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're on par.
What was there influence for that, or like how did you kind of come to that decision, like that you wanted that to be the style?
Oh, this one is actually quite easy. So when I was thinking of the podcast, I was thinking of ways I can react to content without coming up with content. And the best way to explain it is instead of sitting around and coming up with ideas for a podcast, technically the idea and the concept is already created for you. The games happen. you kind of and the spreads happen, you react to it. So that was half of the battle in a sense. I'm just reacting to the football games. I'm not creating anything new. And the last 5 years, I listened to quite a bit of podcasts about spreads, gambling, fantasy football, and there was a couple that really stood out. And I'm thinking, wait, there's room and a spot for me to create a podcast. It didn't really get traction, but for me, it was mostly about proof of concept. If anyone is inquiring about a podcast, I can always show them an episode instead of describing, which is 100 times better.
So it's like it's kind of like those channel, like I don't know what to say exactly, but like I've seen channels that it's like fantasy football where they're like talking about the previous games. It's like that.
Yes, exactly.
Have you ever had any certain sports or like teams that you want to like avoid at all costs?
Well, I'm a Patriots fan, so I try to stay away from the Patriots, whether to put money on the spread, verse or against, at and against. I stay away from the Patriots. Once in a while, I do it, but that's when I have a really good hunch.
What do you mean good hunch? Just that it's gonna go good?
Right, or if I know they're gonna lose, for example, which happened
Okay.
quite often this season, I'm like, "Okay, betting against them," and you know what they say about betting against, your own team, it's like insurance. If your house burns down, you're making money. If it doesn't, you still have a house.
How accurate are your predictions when it comes to like the spreadsheets and everything?
Okay, so at my highest, I was about at 75%. Then the last like I want to say 3 weeks dipped really bad. And we're talking about 1 and 4 weeks, 2 and 3 weeks. And I think at the end of the day, I ended up on par, which is 57, 58% for my season, which is what you really want, what you strive for.
And forgive me, when it comes to sports, I do not know what I'm talking about. But like, what do you mean, like 58% accurate, or like what do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. So 58% of the games I got right. So that means if you put $100,
Hmm.
you're gonna get a good amount back where you're not gonna be in the loss. Uh, the main thing is you still in gambling terms, you still have to pay the juice, which is even if you win. So you put $10, um, and it's straight up, you win $9 back. You don't get $10 back. That $1 goes back to quote unquote the bookie or the middleman.
Do you ever hope to like collaborate with anybody in the future? Like,
Yes, yeah, I've reached out quite a bit to other individuals, and it seems like they are up for it, but then they decline. I'm not sure whether they're intimidated by quality or they just don't have the time. But I would like to collaborate, and I've been asked to go on a podcast, and every single time, last minute, they cancel.
how about like companies and like branding? Have you ever tried to build up your pod?
Yeah, there's a company from I think Saudi Arabia that reached out to me, asked me if they can promote their own gambling website on my show, and unfortunately, they weren't able to compensate me. So I told them, unless you compensate me, I'm not going to mention you because it just wasn't beneficial to me.
Well, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about, it was lovely having you again, and I'd love to have you again maybe next year if you're up for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Congratulations on the podcast. Keep doing what you're doing, and next year, yeah, let's do this again.
Chicka chicka boom, chicka 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 boom, boom boom, chicka chicka chicka. Check me out every other Wednesday. Enjoy. Bye.